Hello and good afternoon, and thank you for joining this conversation. And this speed dating is what I call the DPA, DPAA approach, because these are short bursts of information, and I think it's almost like a TED Talk to some degree, but it's a fireside chat. So appreciate that, and excited to be on the receiving end of lunch because you guys have all eaten, and so there's no distraction. You're not hungry. You're ready to be in touch with what we're about to share today, and loving the theme: revitalization, resilience, and I was going to say resistance, res- reinvention. Yes.
Exactly.
Yeah, what we're going to talk about today with Junaidi is our approach to building audiences. When we think about algorithms, hi, Cesar. When we think about algorithms, we know that they govern our lives, right? Like we're at a place in time where data is being used to help people understand who they are, right? And understanding who you are, your lifestyle, what you want, what you need, and it shapes who we go after. But we know that algorithms are essentially not perfect. We know that there have been government studies around surveillance and identifying people of color as more criminal minded than others. We know that on social platforms, when we look at employability, those often skew towards men. So we know that it's not perfect, and we know that there's a ways to go. And in helping to define that and to build that narrative, we need to make sure that we are doing it with no filters. So today, Junaidi and I will talk about how we work together in our 11-year relationship to ensure that we are doing what we can to ensure inclusion of audiences to future-proof businesses for the 21st century. So, my Oprah cards, perfectly branded UM. Okay, so Junaidi, let's talk, before we get into how our audiences are built, let's talk about BMW and what luxury means to diverse audiences, Black, Latino, Hispanic, Asian, and LGBTQIA+.
Certainly. I believe within the groups that you just mentioned, within African American, Latino community, LGBTQ+, Asian groups as well, BMW maintains the title of being a premium car, a vehicle, and as such, it is still a status of success and aspiration. We do see that even within the groups, although generally they share that same thought and sentiment on the vehicle, on our brand, it does change from group to group as well. So we could see that within Hispanics and the Latino community, it is still ultimately aspirational, whereas in the Asian community, with some concentrated wealth in certain areas of the country, they've been more comfortable, and their outlook is, I just simply love to drive the car. I don't know if anyone's aware, but I think we're known to be the ultimate driving machine, but I'm just throwing it out there. So yeah, that maintains true. And so we try to use data, and we continue to use data for all of our marketing communication initiatives.
Right, and then just understanding these specific nuances when we start to, we're not a monolith, so luxury is not a monolith category, right? There are different aspirations and different needs that fulfill different audience needs based on either their preconceived notions and or their aspirational and attitudinal lifestyle needs. So knowing the symbolism of luxury, we have a thing that we've been working with you guys at BMW called high value audiences. And that's critical to at least establishing from the onset how we identify the opportunity. But, as I think about this and, being on the side of helping to shape it with you guys, I'm always curious about, is there bias? Who's analyzing the data? What assumptions are being made with respect to households, head of household, last name, right? So we know that there's always a last name assumption made between a Latino and an Asian. Automatically, there's that assumption that one is the other and the other one is that one. So what is an HVA, and how is it built for BMW, and how do you ensure no bias?
Absolutely. Well, HVA is a high-value audience, and just to clarify, when we think of high value, you think in terms of monetary, like how much a car is or how much a household income may prove within each group, but that's not necessarily true. High value are those customers that are committed to the brand and that we offer the actual product that aligns with their needs. And they could be in different tiers. It could be what we refer to as UKL, which is the 2 Series, up to the GKL, which is 8 Series, 8M. So those two are considered high value, and we determine that by first, second, and third party data sets. And what's important to have proper data hygiene and make sure that there isn't just one aspect, but more of a 3-dimensional analysis on the data gathered. Is what's important is to also have a diverse team, like we have with to analyze each particular outlook and not scrutinize, but actually analyze and make sure, like, hey, is this really the perspective, or is this just data gathered at a certain time? Because it's very important. Representation matters. And so, like, myself as a Latina, I'm Puerto Rican, I know that I grew up during a time where, statistically, it wasn't showcasing exactly what my experience was in my neighborhood, in my community. And as I've gone into this role and had previous experience with data analytics, I see that it really, really comes down to analyzing the data correctly. And so I'm really happy that not only has BMW performed that, but we continue to follow that pattern of having different viewpoints and connecting to different diverse groups to make sure that it's accurate.
Right. And the thing that I love is that we have first party data through BMW, and we're able to match that and to create and add those 4,000 variables and those attributes that help to round out and personify the audience we're going after. And so, the beauty of it is that, we're constantly also thinking about, it's not a static sort of analysis, right? We come back every year, we look at our data platform, and we look at how the audiences are built and see what other attributes we can pull in and do a very rigorous analysis also around regional, correct?
Absolutely. As we all know, regardless of what your background is, your lifestyle from the West Coast to Central to the Southern region, and of course Eastern, we all have a diverse lifestyle, and none of us can be considered, any entity could be considered static, and so that will also reflect in the data. So we use our model within our internally to then match up with the second and third party as well to create a more accurate analysis.
And when we think about, we have this great process called the high value audience, and we ensure we do as much as we can, from a analysis standpoint at the agency to ensure that there is no bias in how we concept and bring the audience to life. And we know in doing that, we know that diverse audiences are not monolithic. There's always a sort of one-size-fits-all perspective when it comes to Black, Latino, Asian, LGBTQ audiences, and that's definitely detrimental to the growth of any business. And so having said that, how many HVAs have we created jointly for these audiences, and what are the variables that help to drive those different creation of those different HVAs?
Absolutely. I believe we created around an estimated 20 different models for HVAs, and a lot of the attributes are location, culture, household income, lifestyle. It's really, as you stated before, it's not a one size fits all. So you have to look at all angles and see exactly what that group looks like and what's that group, where can we target them, or how can we best align our product with that culture, which is, I think, is important.
How many lines within the models do we have at BMW?
We have several lines. I think I was in the product team, so they became very technical. So it was broken down to KKL, UKL, MKL, and GKL.
Which is why we have to have so many audiences, right?
Exactly.
Because there are different needs that are met for the individual audiences for those particular models. Or have you seen certain audiences have a preference, and then there's a stereotype right there for one model versus another?
Well, so far, we really do see a higher index with what we call the MPA. So that is not full M series. It's an X4 M40 amongst African American and Latinos by at least approximately 10% more than any other ethnic group. Mm-hmm. And whereas within the Asian community, the over-index with the 7 series and X5. Mm-hmm. So yes, there are we analyze the factors, why, where, but generally as a whole, high-level information, these models really do over-index. Right. Compared to others.
And I'm sure if you dig into the psychographics of why they over-index with particular audiences versus another, right, we could probably be on this panel for another 20 minutes talking about that.
Right, and that question did come up for some of our campaigns. We recently had it's Hispanic Heritage Month, so just wanted to put that out there as well. I know everyone's eager to celebrate, as such, we had Victor Cruz do a social media kind of photo shoot, and we pulled data regarding within the Latino community, and we saw that the 2 series, X4 and X6, and X2 was really over-indexed as well. So we have one of our newer models, which please tune in, very exciting. If you log into his social media, you'll see exactly the model we're speaking of, but we also chose him not only because he kind of encompasses the core values of BMW as far as goal-driven, a performer, adrenaline, but he also has integrity and he embraces his culture. In fact, it was his choice to have the photo shoot done in Paterson, New Jersey, where he grew up. And as we all know, that's a very urban area. And it was not filtered. It was exactly his life, his story. And so that's a true representation of how the product must align correctly with the culture.
Right.
Absolutely.
Yeah, and that's interesting, which leads me to the question around, we build the audiences, and that helps us to understand, again, when we're building it, helps us to understand exactly who we should go after, who has the most propensity to purchase a BMW. But then to also not only rest on our laurels with the audience, is to think about content and engagement. How do we go to that next level? So about 2 years ago, when we did the Remix Culture analysis, which is a cultural framework proprietary study that we did in 81 countries, 44 languages, where we actually explored what shapes modern culture and what are the trends shaping modern culture. So we did a couple of workshops with you guys to help create the North Star for those communities, for these communities, to ensure that we're not only building this audience, but then we're activating appropriately. So I know we did a lot of things came out of that study or that workshop, and one of them was, I think, informed the Victor Cruz recommendation, which was the playbook, correct?
Right, that's absolutely true. And as you stated, we can't rest on our laurels, correct? Right now, what may be true and relevant and just the hottest topic right now, tomorrow or within a little bit of a lapse in time, also the consumer just tapestry may change as well. We have certain ethnic groups that are growing, and with that grows opportunity. So we have to constantly monitor exactly what are the opportunities that we may be missing, because we're reaching just one specific group in one particular way. And as we know, the only constant is change, and so data reflect that. It's really our responsibility, jointly, to gather the data and really tell the story it is showcasing us. We have that responsibility. And through that proper, data hygiene and making sure different observations, seeing it from all angles, is truly one way to achieve it.
Yeah. And all the great stuff that we've done to ensure that we are achieving it consistently and not just one and done. So I might have asked this question. So because of the legacy, BMW, the Rondell, everything about it is a luxury brand that everyone wants, right? And as your partner, we know these audiences are extremely important to the brand, especially as we think about, again, future-proofing and 21st century. How do you create a 21st century brand? You need to future-proof the brand. What do you think makes our audience creation process a little bit different or better? And obviously, not having been in any other agency, so you're like, okay, better, it's good right now and it works, right?
Right. I mean, I think we've been doing pretty well in communicating the right product alignment with the culture, with the background, and the right messaging as far as diversity and inclusion on a national level and tier 2 with dealers. However, I think there's no one fit all answer. And so we don't have like a foolproof formula for that. But what we do is that we do look at all the aspects, as mentioned before, in order to derive the most perfect kind of formula and presentation for each group.
Mm-hmm. And then, when we think about measuring success against the BMW equity-based, I like to call it equity-based diverse audience, HVA, a mouthful, but I made it up just now. Is it different versus other audiences? And I don't want to say general market because the multicultural audience is becoming the majority. So to say general market seems like we're talking about, the 20th century, not the 21st century. So when we think about what's different versus other audiences when we're building this HVA?
I think what's different is seeing what their values are. We want to meet what their values are. So if there's a group that's more family oriented, we want that communicated in our communication channels. We also want to make sure and we hear exactly what the data says. And I know we go back to what the data says, but that's very crucial. Being connected with the community. It's not just like, hey, let's be present during February, during African American Heritage Month. It's about continuing an engagement level with each group, not just using it for personal gain, and to say, hey, we're here, we remember you, and then we'll forget about everyone throughout the rest of the year. So the engagement level is part of creating that high value audience.
And when we're creating the measurement strategy, I think it's important to note that there are a multitude of variables that go into how we measure it. So we can't look at it in a silo, I guess is my point of view. We are at a very interesting time in history where we cannot rest on our laurels, as Junaidi has said, and the racial reckoning, I think, opened our eyes up significantly to how we have to approach businesses very differently. So it's not just about the talent, it's about the product and it's about the marketplace. So we've done a lot of things in working with BMW working with them to address the product and the marketplace and working with them on solutions, which is why we talked about remix culture. But it's important to know for the audience that it's extremely important, and as a luxury brand, it's very important to them. So as we think about, and we leave this room today, think about how do you ensure that you're driving inclusivity in your product and how you understand and what data you're using and who's behind, who's in the black box and who's outside the black box, creating the algorithms to help us understand the audience better.